All right, welcome to episode 22 of the Quick Snap Podcast. This is producer Danny. I'm with Brian Hoyer, David Andrews. We have some breaking news a couple days ago that Mike Vrabel will be the new head coach of the New England Patriots. A lot of excitement around Pats Nation, so excited to hear your guys' thoughts. DA, I know we only have you for first segment today, so why don't we start with you and just your reaction to the news to Mike being the new head coach?
Yeah, I know Vrabel from obviously competing against him and a couple games when he was in Houston, a couple in Tennessee. There was a lot of good things. I remember that I'm scarred from playing those teams in Houston, the 2016 playoffs. They had a great defensive scheme, really some great players with Clowney and Whitney Merciless, J.J. Watt, Cushing. Like, they just were able to do a lot of things that caused us some problems that playoff game. And then we played him, obviously, again. I think that was his first year, 18, right? In
Tennessee. In Tennessee.
Yeah. Sorry. Yep.
That was his first year there. And, man, they had a blitz package that was causing us problems. And really, hats off to him. He obviously knew our offensive system, had played against it as a player and a coach. I don't know if Dean Pease was his DC down there at the time in 18 or not.
I think Dean was. Let me look it up. I know Dean has obviously had a big influence on Mike because he was the defensive coordinator when he played here, right?
Yeah, Dean, a legendary coach. And
yeah, love Dean.
I think he was down there.
Yeah, he was defensive coordinator. Yep, 2018,
so,
2019.
When you take Mike, him, obviously, having a Patriots influence, knowing our offense, and really seeing how they tried to attack it that game, it was really impressive. I think, Hoy, what they were doing was because you were there in 18,
yeah,
right?
I was. Yeah. I ended up going in at the end of that game because we were losing.
They were making us push the Mike backside on some of these protections and then bringing too strong. Yeah. And, it had Tommy messed up. It had me messed up.
Even James White, the guy, Mr. Reliable. I remember one in that game. They knew the weakness and they exploited it.
Yeah, and I don't think it was something we had seen. And so, I thought, hats off to them on that. And that happens. And we didn't do a good job handling it as the game went on. But, really hats off to them because it was a great schematic thing that they did. So, I have a lot of respect for him in that. And then my buddy, Hoy, you played with Ben Jones.
Yeah, Ben, yep.
Ben played down in Tennessee for 7 years, I think, with Vrabel for 6 of them.
Well, and also in Houston, that's where I knew Ben from, and that's where where I first interacted with Vrabel.
Yeah, and so they had obviously a relationship, which probably helped. Well, Ben signed with the Titans before Vrabel was there, but I think obviously when Vrabel came there, that was a good connection, and he loved Mike and loved a lot of the things he did. And, I think I haven't had spent tons of time with him yet, obviously, but you listen to his press conference and things like that, and there's a lot of things that Bill said, and even with Gerard, there was a lot of things that Bill said, and I think people be like, oh, like people try to be like Bill, and it's not that to me. It's like, look, like Bill, there was football truths that Bill said, and you know what I mean, Hoy. You've been in those meetings, and maybe Bill had a unique way of presenting those, but it was the truth. And I think, did you see that video Luan put out?
Yeah, it was awesome.
Great video.
Well, like that
what do you
was
say?
like
Keep those buttholes tight. Keep those buttholes tight. That's what you and I grew up with. So that's what
that was a lot of the
to.
stuff, right? They would pull up clips of like Matt Light, and Bill would be like, who is that? And if you didn't know who Matt Light was, obviously none of us overlapped with him. He retired in 11 or 12.
Yeah.
And I'm using him as an example because we've become very close. And but he would ask people like, who is that? And you'd be like, I don't know, like. he'd be like, that's only Matt Light. He's only won 3 Super Bowls, X amount of Pro Bowls, like blocked Dwight Freeney, showed up every week, and you don't even know who the F that is.
I got a great story. I don't want to interrupt you, but that reminds me, my rookie year, he made made me stand up, and we used to have the photos in the team room, and there was one of the entire offensive line. Now, I've only been there since training camp, and these aren't the guys I'm working with, but I knew pretty well, and I'm like, 72's Matt Light, 70's Logan Mankins, 67's Dan Coppin, and from the back of the room, Cope's like, it's fucking Coppin, Hoyer, get it right. I'm like, okay, 61 Steve Neal and 77's Nick Kasier. But like that was the thing, like you got to know all those things. And so hearing Lawan talk about better know the janitor's name, like that's I was getting giggles because that's what I know.
Yeah, but like, you know, and yeah, that like that stuff's important, like how you treat people around the building and you know, and I think Vrabel said in his press conference, like those banners in our stadium aren't going to help us win. But I forget what he said, like they're
Blueprint.
a reminder, blueprint on, you know, and that's the truth. Like what you've done in the past, even if you win the Super Bowl this year, like that's not going to help you win in 2025. Like it's all over. It's back to square one. It's a race. And, you know, those are just truths in football and, you know, in this wonderful game. So, you know, it'll be exciting to get to work with him. It'll be exciting to see over, you know, the next couple of days what, you know, the staff he puts together. You know, obviously there's probably a lot of guys he's worked with and knows of and, you know, but it's also, they might have jobs. So like, you know, it'll be very interesting to see kind of, you know, the staff he puts together and, you know, the coaches, you know, we'll be working with and getting to know them.
Yeah. I mean, look, I said it last week. If you fired Gerard after 1 year, really in my mind, there was 2 candidates, but really in my mind, there was one, and it was Mike. And I came in the year after Vrabes was traded to Kansas City, so I didn't interact with him then, but his reputation preceded himself. And he was talked about in those hallways as one of the founders, one of the cornerstone pieces of what had been established there, right? It was like him, Brewski, Brady, and Matt Light. Those were the guys. I mean, yeah, and there was just like so much respect for this guy and the stories you would hear about him, you know, competing, who's going to drink more water or who's going to work out the earliest. And so you knew about that. And then my first time to actually interact with him was when I went to Houston to be the quarterback down there, and he's the linebackers coach. And he had coached at Ohio State for like a year or two, and then he came there. And this dude still had the passion of a player as a coach, and no one talked more shit from the defensive side of the ball during practice than Vrabel. And I remember at one point being like, Vrabes, you're not playing anymore. Like, let these guys shit talk us, like during training camp. And that was the worst thing you could do, because once you started going back and forth with Vrabes, this guy's going for the throat. And he's an alpha dog, and I think everybody saw that in his press conference. He exudes confidence. He exudes, you know, a well-versed knowledge of the game. Obviously, he played it. And the one thing that I loved, and there's a lot of things to take from his press conference, but he kind of hit on, I can relate to every player in that room. I started off, I was a guy who had to grind it out, special teams guy in Pittsburgh, and then I was a free agent. I went to New England for the opportunity, not the money. I took the advantage of that opportunity. I became a player who got those contracts. Then I got traded. I started to become a mentor. I became a guy who was a coach in the room. And I think that goes a long way. And then you get to see guys like Lawan and Will Compton and those guys who played for him. Ben Jones, you mentioned the video of him and Ben in the tunnel. I sent that to you right away. I said, that's going to be you next year. And you just see that passion, but the empathy for the players because he's been there before. But no question, this guy is going to be the alpha dog in the room. That's just who he was as a player, who he's been as a coach. And you got to love what you see from the press conference. And I think the people who have been in that building and have heard the stories about him and all of those things, I think it's exactly what you expect. And having been around Mike in Houston and then spent some time with him over the years, whether it was at the Derby or whatever it might be. But I thought Julian, on his podcast, they talked about Vrabel with Scott Pioli. He put it well. Like, Matt Light is going to prank you, and it's going to be laughs, and it's all good-hearted. Vrabel's going to come at you, and there's
I saw that.
Yeah, and I was like, you know what? That's a very accurate description because he
Where
cares about you.
He was like, what? It's football.
Yeah,
that was funny.
Exactly.
I heard Vrabel was the only one that could get under Tom's skin in practice.
Oh, I wasn't there, but the stories I heard were epic of all time. Yeah, it's just like, but imagine this: Mike Vrabel is your starting outside linebacker, the ultimate edge setter, right? That's everything. When I would sit in those meetings, look, Bill would get up there. Vrabel could set the edge better than any other player, and so we would hear that over and over again. But this is the guy who now is going to go over to scout team and play safety or play linebacker. I mean, it just shows you the passion he has for the game, how much he loves the game, and like we heard, he did it to get under Tom's skin.
Yeah, I mean, they, all these stories are coming out. Obviously, people that have clips with him or, done interviews with him are putting more stuff out so you see it. And I think it was someone had the interview where he was talking about, because he played the goal line tight end.
Yep.
What did he catch? Two touchdowns in Super Bowls?
10 receptions, 10 touchdowns.
Yep. I think it's 12.
No, but in the Super Bowl.
Oh, in the Super Bowl, yeah, sorry.
Yeah.
I think he had 2 touchdowns in the Super Bowls.
Yeah, one in Philly, I think, and then one in Carolina.
And one in Carolina.
Mm-hmm.
There's that clip of, him, waving his arms because he was open. And Tom, don't ever tell me that you're open. I know who everyone is. Or whatever. It's just funny, too, because you can just see, that's the classic thing receivers do. When you're playing little
always
league
open.
football, I'm open.
Yeah.
They were tough catches too.
Oh yeah.
DA.
Yeah,
Sure.
the Philly one, he bobbled it.
Yeah.
Yeah, it was like Tom drilled it on him, and he was like, But I mean, it shows you the versatility of a guy who worked his way, grind his way up to become a pillar of the Patriots organization, and now to come full circle to have him as the head coach. I think. And look. I get it. People I couldn't understand when I get on social media and people talk about Ben Johnson over Vrabel. I get it. Ben Johnson, offensive guru, the offense is clicking. And I wasn't inside the locker room, but I covered you guys this year, DA. And to me, what the team needed was what Vrabel brings. When he gets up there and says, we're going to get rid of the entitlement from the team, that's when you talk about Taylor Lewan and what he's talking about, that's what he's preparing those players for, because Vrabes understands that the biggest and best part of the team is being accountable to each other and not being entitled. And we've talked about it before. The favorite sign on the wall that I always passed through was mental toughness, doing everything that's right for the team when everything's not going right for you. And I think that's what Vrabes is talking about. You got to come in, and it's about the team. It's not about you as an individual. And I think he'll bring that to a young group, right? There's only, and to me, when I saw Vrabes is hired, I'm like, they need DA back, because you understand that mentality. You can help foster that culture. Now it's going to be a grind for you, right? 10 year, 11 years in, coming back. Yeah, it always is. But and you've been through it. And to me, you're the type of person who has to go out there and emphasize that every single day. And I know you will.
Well, no, I mean, it's always, exciting getting to, see, like I said, the staff, that's obviously the offensive coordinator, O-line coaches, whoever it may be. It'll be exciting to see kind of what, transpires here over the next few days. I don't know, when that will be announced or decided, but we'll see when it all happens.
DA, I have a mailbag question for you before we let you go. We got one that says, if Mike Vrabel was in the trenches right now, had the pads on, the helmet on, is he beating you in a one-on-one? Maybe it's a pass rush, maybe it's a run block. Is he beating you one-on-one in the trenches?
Right now, during rehab?
Right now.
Yeah, right now. Right now, I think if I wouldn't punch somebody, my shoulder would explode. But what's the song? I'm good as I once was.
Yeah.
And you would always talk to you talk to former players, and they're like, "Yeah, I'd probably give you 1 rep. I ain't giving you 2."
That's what Matt Light told us. Remember?
Yeah, I can give you 1. 1's no problem here. So,
that would have been a matchup to see Vrabel in his prime versus David in his prime. Yeah. These are 2 guys. This would be like a grizzly bear versus a freaking mountain lion, full on Boom.
I mean, he's a massive human being. He is
Braves is
he's an
big.
intimidating dude.
Yeah, he had the long arms. I mean, I'll never forget Bill just showing clips of, and this is where, like, going back to Taylor Lewan, like, you better know the defensive keys. This is how, like, we sit in those meetings and Bill would talk to the offense, and then when you go to the defense, like, I'd be looking at our install of our pass plays, but I'd be hearing things and always look at Vrabel setting the edge over here. I mean, he was the prime example of a guy who was doing what was called for him to do, and it was doing what was best for the team. Was it pass rushing always? No. Was it setting the edge in the run game? He did it better than anybody else.
Yeah, it sounds like Vrabel wants to know if even the offensive guys are paying attention to the defensive keys, which I would say, with Bill, like, you kind of knew, like, Bill wasn't going to ask you really what the defense, like our defense, was doing. Obviously, you had to know, if you were on special teams, you needed to know some stuff, which obviously a lot of offensive linemen are not involved in the kicking game. And then, but you had to know the defensive coordinator you were playing, like, maybe if he was a D-line guy versus secondary guy, because that could, maybe change how he did things, right? Because, like, he would always say, like, if you played a defensive back type defensive coordinator, Hoy, he would be like, oh, yeah, like, why does that matter? And maybe you're going to see some simpler stuff up front, but
like
you're going to see
more
some
complex coverage.
More complex coverages. And, same thing, like if he was more of a front guy versus a secondary guy, maybe you're going to see more involvement in blitzes from linebackers and front type stuff versus, some of these secondary extensive coverages, zone pressures, whatever it may be. Like, that's not always true, but, those would be kind of like some of the things he'd want to know. But, like you said, when Bill kind of went to the defense, I would pay attention because I'd find it interesting. Like, what does he think that, should we attack him? Because then you're kind of using that in the back of your mind. Like, maybe, like, all right, this is a different offense than we play, but, like, maybe if it is a similar offense, like, how is Bill seeing the weaknesses in that offense and points of emphasis? So you could use that to prepare, but it wasn't one of those things like I was writing down,
No,
like,
but I also
putting
remember,
in the back
like,
of my mind.
I also remember there'd be times where we'd be playing, like, call it like a more mobile quarterback, and he'd be like, Brady, like, what do we want to do with Roethlisberger on this pass rush? And Tom would be like, don't run by him. You know what I mean? Like, he and obviously Tom had probably heard that speech over and over again, but he would use, like, even the quarterback for our team knows how to like defend the quarterback of the team we're playing.
Yeah.
Cool. Well, DA, you sound excited.
Mailbag right now, no chance I'm blocking Mike Vrabel, even if he's
There's your answer.
Maybe.
Dude, look at him when he goes to those workouts and he puts the bag on.
Yeah. Even if he was 65 right now in my current state, I probably couldn't block him.
Well,
I like the honesty.
Looks like you're about to go get some rehab today.
It's just the truth. Yeah, I
get into that rehab.
I did bench press the first time this
Love
week.
it.
Professor Danny, you probably could
the
have
same
come
amount as me.
No, I give you a little bit more credit, but probably Danny could have came and lifted with me. It was 85 pounds, so you probably could have done that, Danny.
Oh,
I probably could have. What's your heyday like max bench?
Oh man, it's been a while since I've really Hoy knows once you start getting older, it's and Hoy was a quarterback, so they barely work out to begin with.
I was using bands, pliability.
But once you get older and you start having injuries, the whole weightlifting thing, it's still super important. I believe in lifting heavy but when you're going kind of risk versus reward type thing, to max out on bench, to max out on squat, it's there's sometimes some benefits to it, but it's all right, you go max out on squat and you tweak your back. Now you're messed up for 2 or 3 weeks. You max out on bench and you kind of pull the pec. Now you're, out for 3 weeks. And, so it's not as much of that when you get older. And my biggest thing has been shoulder issues. I had the shoulder surgery after the 21 season. So I haven't maxed out benching or even, I think the last time I maxed out squatting, were you on the team, Hoy, when we went paintballing?
Yeah.
I don't know why, but me and James Devlin got in a huge argument on the bus ride coming home. and he
well, you know,
basically
Devlin loved to squat.
Yeah, and I mean, I did too. And I'm not going to sit here and say he wasn't stronger than me, but we were like, got in this big argument and our egos just started carrying away. So we literally came home, we're covered in paint. We go in the weight room and we maxed out squatting together.
I was going to say, I've been in there when you've squatted some heavy weight. I remember slapping your lat, trying to get you, some guys to get smacked around before they go lift heavy weight.
That might have been 2018 off season.
Yeah, probably. Yep.
And I think I did like 635 for one, and I probably had a little bit more in the tank. But it was one of those, like, again, it was like, one of those, it's like, all right, like, it was like the last day of OTAs, and it was one of those things where it's like, do I push this and try to go to 45, 55, wherever, and, tweak a back, a knee, a groin, and then now my summer where I should be kind of peaking going into training camp, I'm going to be down for a little while. So, that's always in the back of your mind, and I think some guys use that as a crutch in the weight room. Like, man, I don't need to do much because I don't want to hurt myself. And that's not a good recipe either, but you're not a super young guy anymore. And, sometimes maxing out, you can get a lot more beneficiary, stimulus from the weights, in my opinion, doing like 4 sets of 3 or something like that at a, 80-ish percent, 85%, a lot safer weight. You're in control. You're still getting, and if you look at the tonnage of it, if you squat 625 one time, but you squat 475 for 12 reps, like that's going to be a lot more weight over a period than just doing one max.
Danny, you would put 475 on your back and just go through the floor.
Crumble. I would crumble.
I don't think Danny could get it off the rack.
No, not a chance. Not a chance.
Can I, you brought up the paintball. Can I tell one of my favorite stories from that paintball excursion?
Yeah.
So this is my first time ever playing paintball. So we get the rules, like if you get hit, you got to put your hands up. Right. And they broke us up into these teams. And I was remember they had like there was like the field, like the woods. There was the woods, the blow up, and then there was like the city. Like Nuketown.
Yeah.
And I came around the corner, and we were going against Bill and his team. And he was kind of hiding behind this house, and I had an angle. And I shot him, and he didn't put his hands up. So I just kept going, boom, 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 boom. And I must have hit him like 6 times before he actually put his hand up. And then he never even knew it was me who hit him. And it was like one of like, man, I just paintball Bill. And he didn't know to put his hands up, so I just kept peppering him.
Did Ives get out there and paintball?
I don't remember him out there. I mean, that would just be a sitting duck. Yeah,
Dante did it. Dante was out there.
That was one of the most fun off seasons in my NFL career. We did paintball. We did the Fenway Day. We did.
Was that in 18 too?
Yeah, we did the
Fenway
the field day.
The Fenway Day was my favorite.
Yeah,
because you have the best athletes in the world who went and started looking like the worst athletes in the world.
Baseball's if you didn't play baseball growing up, I don't care how athletic you are.
And I guess you watch like even just like the routine ground ball to third base.
Yeah.
Dude, it doesn't look they make it look so easy. And then we got out there and you're like, dude, that's a long way.
Oh, that's a long throw.
Like, that's a long throw, and they are posing that thing.
The one that you had to get the ball off the Green Monster. I mean, I saw people toppling over because they couldn't judge where the ball was going to be. Then it was over their head. Yeah. They were backpedaling. I mean, baseball is a very unique sport because you don't have to be super athletic, but you got to know how to play the game.
Yeah, it's like golf, kind of. Like I mean,
I would pay money to see you on a golf course, DA. I would pay money.
You wouldn't. I just like to drive around and drink.
Yeah, I could have guessed that.
That's really
all right,
dude. Yeah, but some of us got to go to work today, boys.
Yeah,
so.
any meetings today?
This is
if
work.
You see Vrabes, tell him say hi. We say hi and tell him to come on the show.
Yeah, I'm not going to do that, but thanks, Danny.
We're not to busting with the boys status yet. Once we get there, we'll try.
We'll get there. All right, DA.
All right,
thank
see
you,
boys.
See ya.
All right, now that David is at the facility getting his rehab, it's just last couple weeks ago we had the Double D show. Now we have the BD show. It's just Brian and Danny here.
New sheriff in town. Dave is like, I got more work to do down at the facility than the podcast. So
I know It's just me and you now, but
sorry, I won't take any shots at him like he took at me when I wasn't there. So
right. Well, we'll see. We'll see. So we'll do a couple mailbag here. Everyone, again, please send in these questions. We love them. Follow us on Twitter. Respond there. DMs, Instagram replies, YouTube comments, whatever it is. Send in your questions. We love it. But this one's from Real Whiskey Biz. Which side of the field should the Patriots focus on for free agency, offense or defense?
I like that name. I wonder what kind of whiskey he likes. We'll have to find that out. I'm a big bourbon guy.
Okay.
Look, I think now that Vrabes has been hired and he's done some interviews, it's very telling of what he said. They were like, what kind of players are you and Elliott going to want to get? And he's like, it's going to sound stupid, but good ones. And I think he understands more than anyone about finding the right player with the right character, right? That is going to fit in with what he talked about. We heard all his comments during the press conference, and obviously he wants good players. And I know people are asking him, what about A.J. Brown? Like, you had a good relationship with him, all those things. I think the one thing having Vrabel as your head coach helps with is you got a guy who's well respected throughout the entire league. Like, they know what his resume is as a player. He's NFL Coach of the Year just a few short years ago, and he's a leader of men, and he's an alpha dog. So I think people understand that. And then the other comment I thought, and I was laughing at, and this is just what you're going to get from him as a head coach. Like, they were talking about free agency. I think it was on EEI or something like that. And he's like, the only thing that free agents care about is green, and it's not natural grass. Like, you got to understand, like, that's where people are at, especially, obviously, T. Higgins is going to be this big guy everybody's going to covet. Like, if you're T. Higgins and you have one chance to maybe make this big contract, like, are you going to take a pay cut to go somewhere? Probably not. I mean, I think it's going to come down to those guys figuring out the players they want, and that just goes with the on the field and off the field. So you got to do research on all of that. And to get to the point, I think there's going to be a combination of both. I don't think you're just going to see them sign all defensive players or all offensive players. I think they understand that there's different needs, and whether that's the offense side of the ball, defense side of the ball. He also talked about there's different levels of free agency, right? Like those big money deals, they're going to be done right away, and then things kind of filter out, and then you're going to find your core guys, like your locker room guys, your special team guys who can contribute on offense or defense. And so you can hear from his comments that he has a very direct and clear idea of how he wants to take that. But it's also like, look, when you looked at this open vacancy at the head coach of the Patriots, like, it was a very coveted job because you have a young quarterback, you have a lot of cap space, and you have high draft picks. That's just the reality. And so you insert a guy like Mike, who has done it very well at a very high level and has an understanding of how he wants to build his team. And so you give him all of those pieces. And I think he said something like, I want our fans to be proud and excited. I don't know. He's like, I'm not going to give you a timeline. I'm not going to do those things, but we're going to make sure that we play and perform a way you're going to be proud to be. And I believe that full-heartedly.
Yeah. And technically right now we have a vacancy at general manager, right? Like, we don't have a specific general manager. And I've seen the reports that Elliot Wolf, he's going to be reporting to Vrabel, which I don't really know how that all works. But we also are bringing in one of Vrabel's former guys that he worked with, forgetting his name, but the executive from front office guy from the Giants. And so he's coming in. So that dynamic should be interesting. But it sounds like Vrabel's will be making a lot of these decisions when it comes to free agency and moving around the roster.
Look, I've been a part of a lot of different organizations, and a lot of people do it differently. And I think everyone wants a defined way to look at it, right? And because that's historically how it's been. But the game and the league has evolved. And I think when you hear Mike talk about he wants to be in concert and work together with Elliott, and he's just getting to know Elliott and all of those things. And I think he said something interesting, like there was some things that didn't allow Elliott to invest fully in his mode of how he was going to do things. But like I said before, Mike's an alpha dog. Like, he's going to have a vision for the team. He's going to have a certain type of player that he wants to look for, because you heard it. Like, there's not going to be any entitlement. He basically said, everybody's starting fresh and you're going to earn what you get. And those are all things that I grew up believing in and learning in that way. And for me, having done it that way, that's what I love to hear, because in my opinion, and it was pretty interesting how he talked about, because they asked him about that on one of the radio shows. When you're a head coach, he's all over the place. And one of the greatest moments from yesterday was Bill O'Brien calling in, and he's like, "It's Bill from Chestnut Hill, long-time listener, first-time caller," and Vrabes like recognizes it right away. Which that's Billy was the one who brought Mike to Houston, and so a lot of mutual respect there. But hearing those guys go back and forth, and how great is it for the city of Boston to have Mike Vrabel down at Foxborough and Bill O'Brien over there at BC and what he's building and all of those things. But he said something like, this new era of player, like they're in college and they're just told how great they are because they have to be told how great they are to get to school. Then these schools have to tell them how great they are because they don't want them to leave. And the schools who are trying to get them to leave are telling them how great they are. And it's a different reality when you come to the NFL, right? Like there's no transfer portal. Like you get drafted by a team, you're on that team for minimum 4 years unless you get cut. I mean, that's the reality. Like you better figure out a way to humble yourself and make it work. And I think that's what he was trying to emphasize there. And for me being, and this is sad for me to say, because I was just playing last year, like old school, like an old school mentality. Like to me, that's the right school mentality.
Yep. Well, there's also a lot of chatter about his rounding out his coaching staff, right? And so this one comes from Johnny Stew 13, and it's for you, Hoy. If Josh McDaniels comes back as OC, which there's a lot of rumors that he might, will you come back and help Drake with the system?
I mean, it depends on what that looks like. I'm never going to say never. I have so much respect for Josh and what I've learned from him. And really, when I look at my career, I was fortunate to be around a lot of great coaches. I just talked about Bill O'Brien. He was the first quarterback coach, offensive coordinator that I knew. Then I went and I played for Kyle Shanahan in that system. I played for Norv Turner. And then came back and eventually played for Josh in this system. And it was different than, it was the same terminology, a lot of things, but Josh put his spin on it different than Billy did. And obviously I played for Billy in Houston, played for a great guy by the name of Dal Loggins, who just got hired as the head coach at App State. And he had learned kind of both systems and melded them together. So I've been in a lot, and I don't usually do this, but I kind of was on X and kind of going back and forth and just trying to educate people, because I think, a lot of people see like the Sean McVays and they hear West Coast and they say, oh, we got to do West Coast. People don't even know what West Coast is, because the West Coast, what it started to what it is now, is not even, I mean, it's a far cry from when Joe Montana and Bill Walsh did it and those concepts. And I've played in them, and each guy puts their own spin on it. And someone was trying to say like Josh's system isn't dynamic. And I said, hold on a second. I know for a long time it was Tom and Josh working together, but I saw in 2020, we signed Cam Newton in training camp, right before training camp, and install and basically go out and execute an entire quarterback running package, zone reads, all that stuff in a matter of weeks, and then throughout that season. The next year, Mac Jones is a rookie in 2021 and goes to the Pro Bowl and takes us to the playoffs. And I know obviously it's not just him, it's the team, and then Josh goes to Vegas, and Devonta Adams leads the league in touchdown receptions, has the second best year of his career in receiving yards, all while Josh Jacobs leads the league in rushing. So don't tell me that this offense isn't up to date. And the one thing about Josh is he's very adaptable, and that's what that offense is built on. And so the one thing that people don't fully understand is like the plays are everybody runs the same plays. It's how do you marry them together? How do you do those things? So I think I've learned from a lot of great coaches. Josh is at the top of that list. I learned so much about him from just game planning. And I remember we would come in and have ideas for like the passing game, and he'd be like, well, hold on, they got Aaron Donald here. We got to figure out how we're going to protect this. So like there's a difference between the route and marrying it up with the protection. And I think Josh, no one knows protection better than him. He was surrounded by a lot of great coaches over the years, and he learned from all those guys. He knew the line coaching because he learned from Dante, and he could coach it just like he could. And, so I would never say never to anything like that. It just depends on how it looks. And I think the one thing that you're going to get from Josh is an experienced guy who won multiple Super Bowls as an offensive coordinator, has proven that he can help mold a young quarterback in Mac Jones as a rookie, and has proven that he's very adaptable to what those guys do. And I know in his time off, he spent time in a lot of different colleges, learning things, visiting different places. So Josh is a guy who's constantly, and I remember him saying, like, you always got to be ahead of the curve. If you just say, we're going to do what we did next year, what we did last year, like people are studying that stuff. So you got to add wrinkles. You got to adapt to the players you have. So I have nothing but good things to say about Josh.
Yeah. And Jacoby Brissett's a free agent this year. We're probably, Joe Milton's going to be the backup given his performance last week of the year. I think having a guy in there that knows Josh, knows the system would be pretty good for Drake.
Appreciate you. I'm gonna have to get you out there and start catching routes for me if that's in the cards.
I would love to. You know my cell
High school
number.
receiver, right? You sent me some videos.
I sent you. I
and,
mossed that guy, and I sent you my huddle tape over the weekend.
Yeah, I didn't know why your legs look so short though. You're a pretty tall guy, and maybe it was just the angle of the
I'm
video.
6'2", 185. You know,
All right, you let me know when you're ready, and we'll record that. That would be great content for this. We'll get David when he's rehabbing snapping. He'll snap it to me. We'll send you on some routes, but you're gonna have to wear a helmet because I don't want to hurt that pretty face.
Okay. Well, I'm happy to do it. We'll get that arm ready to go for next season for Josh. But yeah, as a fan, like that, we'll wrap up the mailbag here. But like just fan perspective, I know I was adamant about wanting Ben Johnson, want change, want a young offensive guy, the young genius. I want the McVay, I want the Shanahan, the Mike McDaniels, whatever it is. But now that Vrabel's in here and he's done his press conferences and I've seen him kind of uplift the fans, uplift the players, even with DA, like I'm excited. Vrabel's our guy. We got our guy. And so
look, I get it. Like sometimes perception becomes reality. And I think if you're a fan of the game, you watch the Lions and you see Ben Johnson, you're like, this guy's incredible, right? But I think when you look at the big picture and you look at the organization and where it's at and the team that they have, Vrabel is the perfect fit, in my opinion. Ben Johnson will go somewhere and maybe he'll have success. I think he probably will because he's a very smart guy. He's got a great system, but a lot goes in from being a coordinator to being a head coach. And that the reality is that he will be a first-time head coach. And I'm not going to sit here and say I don't watch his offense and say, God damn, like they're coming. I mean, we talked about a few weeks ago, faking the fumbled snap, having the running back, like there's creativeness, right? So I get it as fans, you see that, but you got to dive deeper than just like what you see. And that was what on X, I got into it in this conversation. Like you can't just cherry pick things that are good and bad and say, this is what I want. Like it's all encompassing. And I think that's how you have to look at it. And I think the Patriots got the right guy for the job.
Yep, me too. All right, well, let's get into some around the league. We had a NFL playoffs this past weekend, so let's talk some ball.
All right, this week's edition of Hero of the Week, the NFL Wild Card Round edition of Hero of the Week, is brought to you by Hero 95, a crisp, low-calorie lager, only 95 calories and 3.6 carbs. Go find a Hero at your local liquor store. Your friends will thank you later. Head to drinkhero95.com. Hero 95 is brewed for the hero in you. And this week's hero is rookie in his first playoff game, Jaden Daniels, leading the only wild card team to win on wild card weekend. He had 286 yards passing, 2 touchdowns, also led the team in rushing with 36 yards. A game-winning drive that led to the doink and in field goal, and also led an 18-play, 9-minute drive over 90 yards for the first Commanders/Redskins win in nearly 7,000 days since 2006. So hats off to him. This guy has been ice in his veins all year, and it didn't change when it got to the playoffs. I mean, some of the throws he was making too with such confidence, such ease, and he's just so chill. It's been so impressive to watch.
Yeah, I think he's locked up for Rookie of the Year, Offensive Rookie of the Year for sure. It has definitely been impressive, and this was unfortunately really the only good game of the weekend to watch as a fan. There was a couple blowouts, a couple not great football, but the Commanders Bucks on Sunday Night Football gave us a good product. That's for sure.
Definitely the back and forth, the electricity. That's what you think like pretty much every playoff game should be, but in reality, sometimes it just doesn't go that way, and that's what we saw with the other games. Really,
did you see on the kicker come in before he hit that doink and in? Like,
did
you see him walking around with his helmet and his hair?
Zane Gonzalez is his name, right?
Yeah.
I feel kind of bad. Like the guy's literally come out and talked about how he has OCD issues and how so. I know, like this is where the internet's gonna make fun of a guy, but not look at the backstory. But he's been very open about his struggles with OCD.
Wow.
And I think that was their 4th kicker of the year.
I think so. Good for him. Maybe even more than that. But yeah,
that's a guy I'm rooting for from here on out. Like
OCD might actually help you if you're a kicker. I feel like
until it doesn't go well.
Yeah,
I'm sure.
Right. Okay, that was a good game. And moving on to a not so good game, the one that kicked us off for the weekend on Saturday in the 4:30 slot, which is the Texans. I feel like every time they're in the playoffs, they're in the 4:30 slot, which is funny. They're 4:30 next weekend against the Chiefs, but yeah, they beat the Chargers. I mean, they demolished them. Won by 20, 32-12. CJ Stroud looked good, and I think that was because he had more time to throw this week. In past weeks, he's been rushed, and he hasn't been good this year. He wasn't the CJ Stroud his rookie year, but he had a good game. They got the win. Justin Herbert, curious your take on Justin Herbert, but like everyone wants to talk about how great Herbert is, but I don't think he's won a playoff game yet.
Yeah, well, like you just said, CJ Stroud hasn't been good this year. I would argue different. He hasn't been as good as he was his rookie year, but he's been a good quarterback. Like I would put him in probably the top 10 when you look at quarterbacks overall. Like he's a guy who, look, not everything's going to be the same from year to year, and they went into this year with Stephon Diggs, and they were going to have Nico Collins and Tank Dell. Well, now two of those guys are out, and so things got to adapt and you got to adjust. And I would say he played really well. He was consistent. You're right, he had more time to throw, but what impressed me the most was the Texans defense and just how they came out in a similar fashion to what we saw in the Rams game. Like the Rams defense kind of, maybe not a top defense all year. I know that the Texans have had good pass rush and those things, and Derek Stingley's an all-pro and Pro Bowler, and they came to play. And you're right, like I know people are going to knock Justin Herbert, but this is where you got to look at the work as a whole. And I get it. Like people are going to say it's the playoffs. You got to come and you got to compete when things are on the line. That's true. But I still look at what he's capable of doing, his skill set, and all of those things. And it's just happened to be a bad day for him. Look, I had a bad day on a 4:30 Houston Texans playoff game one day too. And one game doesn't define who you are as a player or what your career is going to be. And sometimes learning from those mistakes is the toughest thing. And look, not all interceptions are created equally either, because I saw two go right through receivers' hands, get tipped up and get picked off. And so you can't just look at the stat line and say, man, Justin Herbert stinks. Well, that's not the case. It just wasn't a great day. The Texans came out to play, and I've talked about this before, whether it's on the radio show I do, whatever it is, and Bill would always, the first thing he would talk about when it comes to playoffs, it's not about experience, about execution. And the Texans just executed and out-executed the Chargers that day. That's just the reality, and this is what makes the football great. There's no series, so you can't have a bad game and say, "Oh, we'll come back and play these guys tomorrow." It's one and done, and so much is riding on that. And a few plays here or there are going to decide the outcome of the game. And when you have 4 turnovers, it's just going to be almost impossible to win.
Yeah, those 4 interceptions from Herbert. I believe the stat is that no player has ever had more interceptions in a playoff game than they did in the regular season, and he had 3 interceptions all regular season. So it's like kind of a good stat because he only had 3 picks all year, but then it's a bad stat because he played bad when it matters most. Yep. But the Texans get rewarded to play the number 1 overall seed, the Chiefs. So that'll be a good one. Moving on, the Ravens-Steelers. This game was a blowout. The score, they won by 2 touchdowns, 28-14. It still looked like they won by 5 touchdowns. I mean, this was not even close. I think the Ravens had 299 rushing yards overall. Henry accounted for 186 of those with 2 touchdowns. Lamar had another 81 rushing yards, and he threw for 175 yards and 2 touchdowns through the air. So this was just the Ravens being a lot better than the Steelers.
Yeah, look, I mean, this is what's scary about the Ravens. If you're going to let them run the ball, you might as well forget about it because they're going to play the game on their terms. They're going to get ahead, and then they can control the game how they want to with their offense. And when you let Derrick Henry run 186 yards, which Vrabes had a great comment, they're like, "Oh, you're a run-first quarterback." He goes, "No, our best player was the running back. Like, why wouldn't we feed the running back? Like, that's what you're going to do." And clearly, that's what the Ravens are doing. And Lamar only threw for 175 yards. Like, you don't need to throw for 300 yards when your running back's running for 186 and 2 touchdowns. And then your quarterback's adding another 81 yards. So this is why the Steelers are a formidable opponent, because if they can get the run game going, they have everything available to them. And then defensively, the Ravens at the beginning of the year was a liability. I would say they've come on strong. A guy we just talked about, Dean Pease, has recently gone down to help out there as a defensive veteran assistant, and Zach Orr, a young guy who's taken over as a play caller for the first time. Our boy Kyle Van Noy down there, a resurgence in his career, and you pair a good defense with a good rushing game, and that's a formula to win when it comes to the NFL playoffs.
Do you have a take on Mike Tomlin in the head coaching situation there? Because, now everyone wants to talk about, is he the guy? Because, he's been there for over a decade and he's never had a losing season, which is great. But he's won a Super Bowl as well. But he hasn't got over the hump in recent years since Big Ben's been gone. They really haven't had a quarterback. But now everyone wants to talk about, should they move on from Tomlin? Do you have a take there?
I mean, look, I've sat on this show and talked glowingly about Mike Tomlin, and I was only there with him for 3 weeks.
Mm-hmm.
And what I saw from him, I've always thought he's a great coach. We've seen a little bit of the inside from the Hard Knocks. You've seen some of that. Look, we've said it before. Like, one team's going to win the Super Bowl, but if you're winning every year and putting yourself in position to make that run for the Super Bowl, I think that's all you can ask for. David has talked about it before. All you want is a chance to be in the dance and then go out there and control your destiny. And I would say the one disappointing thing when you look at the Steelers is they end the season on 5 consecutive losses, right? So we talk about the playoffs, you want to be trending upwards. They were already trending down as they entered the playoffs. Why that is, I mean, the offense was struggling. You've dealt with different quarterbacks during this year. There's a lot that goes on. And so, look, I remember last year being in Vegas and reading, Pro Football Talk or whatever it was, and people were calling for Sean McDermott to be fired last year. I'm pretty sure they're happy they didn't do that, right? So I get it. People think that their team should go win the Super Bowl every year, but that's just not reality. I mean, look how fortunate here in New England to win 6 in a 20-something year span. That it'll never be done again, in my opinion. It's just too hard. The teams, you can't keep teams together like that anymore. Now the Chiefs they're trying their best, and we'll see. I know we're going to talk about a preview for this week upcoming, but like, their starters haven't played football in 24 days. Now, if there's a team that knows how to handle it, I would say Andy Reid and Mahomes and Kelsey and Chris Jones, like, they have good veteran leadership and how to make sure that they're getting enough work in to be ready to go. But the Texans, when they come out and play the way they played last week with their hair on fire, and now you're going to go in and it's the playoffs, I think things get taken up another notch. And it'll be, to me, when we watch that game Saturday, how the Chiefs come out and start the game will be very telling, like how the rest of the game is going to go.
Definitely. And speaking of Sean McDermott and keeping his job and bounce back this year, the Bills 31-7 over the Broncos. And the Broncos scored on their opening drive. It was 7-0. And Bo Nix had a 40-yard touchdown pass. You might think this is going to be a good game. Bo Nix had a great year, but then just 31 unanswered. Allen did Josh Allen things, 272 yards, 2 touchdowns. James Cook on the ground, 120 and a touchdown. So Bills move on, and they play in the game of the week, which we'll preview and get your picks after this. But game of the week, Bills-Ravens. So that'll be a good one. Yeah.
I think, look, that game, because we sat down to watch it, it was a little boring to get, like you said, the Broncos came out, fast start, scored at 7. I think Bills got a field goal here, got a field goal there. And then they came out in the second half and just turned it on. And like you said, Josh Allen did MVP things. The one throw to the running back who's sliding and keeps his ankle off the white in the back of the end zone for a touchdown. Yeah, that was great. And the one thing that I would say with the Bills is, and since Joe Brady's taken over, is the emphasis of the running game and James Cook and him showing up and also the ability to spread the ball around to, I think, 9 or 10 different receivers and tight ends in the passing game. Like, they kind of have everything going for them, and their defense really showed up because their defense hadn't been great against playoff teams this year. Well, when it got to the playoffs, they did pretty good, giving up 7 points, and really after that first drive, they weren't able to do much.
Yeah, Brady, the Bills OC, he's gonna I feel like he'll get a head coaching job this offseason.
Josh Allen's doing his best to prevent that.
I saw that.
He's like, he's not doing much. I wouldn't come talk to him. You guys really don't need him. We need him here. He needs to keep learning. Like, in a weird, sarcastic way, he's kind of giving a glowing shout out to his OC.
Yeah, he'll probably be gone. All right, 2 more games here in the wild card weekend. Eagles over the Packers, 22-10. This game stunk to watch. Wasn't very fun. Jordan Love wasn't good. He had 3 interceptions. Eagles defense is very legit after last year being just bad. So Saquon, again, 119 yards, and he had that long run at the end where he kind of like slid down. Could have been a 70-yard touchdown, but
that was cool. Bettors weren't very happy about that.
Yeah, I know. But yeah, Eagles, I mean, they look good.
Yeah, defense, you talked about Vic Fangio, a guy that I'm familiar with from having played when he was in the defensive coordinator in Chicago, has really turned that around. They've done a great job. And the same thing, to me, this is the NFC version of the Ravens, right? Like, you got a running back who's capable of breaking the game open. You have a quarterback who can throw it and run it. And that's a great combination, because if you let these guys, same way, run the football, now they have A.J. Brown, Devonta Smith, Goddard, all of these guys, and you have to start bringing people in the box to try to stop the run game. Well, they're capable of throwing it too. And so, to me, if I'm going against the Eagles or the Ravens, my goal is to stop the run And I know that comes with the tall task of having to defend the pass game, but you can't let them get that. You got to make them beat you with something that's not their bread and butter. And then also you got to get ahead of them quick where they don't feel like they can just sit there and run the ball all game. So I think this is one of the most intriguing games this week is the Eagles playing the Rams, because the Rams are dealing with a lot, but we're going to talk about right here how they came out and played down in Arizona, which was supposed to be a home playoff game, which turned into kind of a road game. There was a lot of Vikings fans. They didn't care. Their defense came out, they pinned their ears back, got after Sam Darnold. So that Rams-Eagles game, and they played already this year in a game when Saquon ran for 255 yards. So I think if you're the Rams, you're going to go in and say, let's see what happens if we hold Saquon to 100 yards. Let's see where the game kind of lies, which is no easy task, but that's one I'm really excited to watch.
Yeah, you said the Rams played good, and this was your Super Bowl pick, so
yeah,
they're bounced.
I only got one half of it left.
Yeah, and I'm curious your thoughts on Sam Darnold. Did he blow did he just lose $100 million in free agency?
No, I don't think so.
You think he'll still get signed?
I think, as we just talked with Mike Tomlin and Justin Herbert, you can't make emotional, reactionary decisions. And I talked about this on the radio yesterday. Like, okay, yeah, you drafted J.J. McCarthy, but like, what does that mean?
Right.
What if you let Darnold walk and J.J. McCarthy takes over? And I'm sure he's a good player, but he's a rookie and he has rookie mistakes, kind of like what we saw with Drake this year, right? Like a lot of great plays, but some learning plays. And you go from a 14-win team to an 8 or 9 win team. Are you going to be okay with that? I don't know. And look, David just said you can't repeat one year to the next year. Things change. The team will be different. But I think Sam has proven, when you look at it as a whole, I know the last 2 weeks weren't great, but the people were covered the other night. That was the one thing when I was sitting there watching the game and I rewatched it to be able to talk on the radio about it. Like, there were some coverage sacks, 4-man rush, guys weren't really open. The interception, I didn't think was a great read, and he could have progressed. But when you're getting pressure like that as a quarterback, there's an internal clock, and you always have an internal clock. And then you get in the game, and that clock adjusts. Sometimes you get out there, and you're like, man, I'm going to have all day to throw today. And other times it's like quick game, and you're getting hit as soon as you're letting go of the ball. And when that starts happening, you're like, if I have a decent look at my first read, I'm going to throw it. So he goes to throw the out. Can't follow through because his arm gets hit on the helmet, throws a shitty ball, it's a pick. I think if he felt like he could progress because he had more time, he actually has a cross route by Jalen Naylor coming right behind the out route. That's going to be a big play. And people see that and say, oh, Sam Darnold stinks. Well, you got to take into consideration what's going on around him. And this is the ultimate team game. And I think Sam Darnold over an 18-week season, not just a two-week sample size, has proven that he's in the right place. He's got the right coaches around him. He's got the right players around him. And this is just a scenario where it's 2 bad weeks of football, but that doesn't define him as a player or his career or his season. And I think you saw Kevin O'Connell kind of sit up there and say those things and say, Sam's done a lot to get us here. And it'll be an interesting conversation. This is going to be, other than T. Higgins, I think the most watched free agent and how they handle it, because you let him go, you're taking a big gamble on a guy who, you traded up to draft, but he's dealing with a nagging knee injury. We had reports like midway through the season that he had kind of had a little bit of a miscue in that rehab. And I know we've seen him on the sidelines recently and all of those things. But and look, they have some big free agents, right? You got Sam, but Aaron Jones is a free agent. Byron Murphy's a free agent. Both of the safeties are free agents. Steph Gilmore's a free agent. So as we say, like, no team is ever the same year to year. How does that alter what your plans are for the quarterback? I don't know. And now the one good thing I would say is you got Justin Jefferson locked up. You got Mario Addison or Jordan Addison, Mario Addison, defensive end, and Hawkinson. Like, you got like your core receiving group guys back, but like Cam Robinson, left tackle, maybe that's a person that the Patriots might be interested in, who's probably going to get paid. Like, that team will be vastly different, not to mention you could lose some coaches due to your success. Like, Brian Flores is interviewing for head jobs. Josh McCown is interviewing, I think I saw, for the offensive coordinator job for the Patriots, but also has some head coaching requests. Like, people overlook those things too. So when you have success, it's great, but sometimes it can hurt the team in the long run because you have attrition.
Yeah, Darnold will either be good on the Vikings again next year, or he'll help a team in free agency. And you guys make fun of my stature on this show today, but you look at JJ McCarthy, I tower over that dude and would dominate him.
I don't know what his size. What is his size? I don't even know.
They fanned to him the last week of the season in the Lions game, and he just looked so scrawny and like.
Well, you got to remember this guy's going through. I mean, like. True. When you're going through rehab, like it limits what you can do and all of those things. Plus, when you're a quarterback, you don't want to get too bulky up top because that restricts your ability to throw. That's why pliability works, especially at the quarterback position.
TB12 method. Okay, well, that brings us to some divisional round picks for this coming weekend, and we'll fly through these, but we'll start with the Saturday slate. At 4:30, it is the Chiefs-Texans, number one seed Chiefs. Texans go to Kansas City. Who do you got in that game?
Oh, man, I feel like I know why everyone hated us, the Patriots, for so long, because you just don't want to see the Chiefs win. But my heart tells me to go for the Texans and the way they came out, but my head tells me Chiefs. I just think they're too experienced. Andy Reid is too good of a coach, so I'm going to have to go with the Chiefs.
It was the same narrative last year for the Chiefs, like, they weren't that as good as they've been, but like they still won a Super Bowl. I think you can say the same thing. They might be the worst 15-win football team that I've ever seen. They squeezed some games out, but yeah, I think the Chiefs. We'll see.
I think a lot. And Bill would always kind of tell us like the game will declare itself. Like you obviously go in with a week of preparation, practice. You have an idea of what they do. You have an idea of what you're going to do. But sometimes you got to go out there and he would always use that term. The game will declare itself in like that first quarter, and you'll understand what the game plan is. I think this game, how the Texans come out, how the Chiefs come out, will declare how the rest of the game is going to go. Because look, football players are creatures of habit, and we're part of routine. And when you're the Chiefs starters and you haven't played live football in 24 days, that's a long time. You very rarely, I can't think of a scenario unless you're getting hurt, where you're out that long and then all of a sudden you're back in and now you're playing the most meaningful game of the year. So that's what I'm looking forward to watching at 4:30 on Saturday, is just how they come out and how the Texans came out on fire last week. Are they able to repeat that up in Arrowhead?
Yep. I don't think the Chiefs lose yet. I think they lose to the winner of the Bills-Ravens game. Saturday night, we have the Lions-Commanders. This should be a fun, high-scoring game. Obviously, we know what the Lions can do, but we talked about Jaden Daniels earlier. I think this will be a fun game. But who you got, Lions-Commanders?
I think this is one of the most exciting games of the weekend, without a doubt, because you know the Lions are going to score points. You just know they are. I mean, they've done it all year, and we've already hit on Ben Johnson a little bit earlier. I could see this being more of a shootout type game, because I think the one thing about the Lions, they are dealing still with some injuries on the defensive side of the ball. Now, they still were able to, we just talked about Sam Darnold, keep the Vikings in check in that season finale to get that number one seed, but no one needed that number one seed more than the Lions. It's not like the Chiefs where they had it locked up and they could rest some guys. Like their guys had to play in that last game of the year to secure that number one seed. I think David Montgomery, Dan Campbell said will be back, so they'll get their Sonic and Knuckles package back. One more weapon for Goff to have. But I'll be interested to see, like, the Lions play a lot of man coverage. How are they going to handle Jaden's ability to run? Are they going to put a spy? Like, when you talk about man coverage, there's a few ways you can do it. But usually in man coverage, you don't account for the quarterback, because you either put a blitzer who blitzes the back to keep him in protection, or you have a linebacker who kind of sits back there and helps see where maybe he can help out, and you kind of funnel everything, all these receivers, into that extra guy. With a Jaden Daniels, if you want to play man, are they going to take that extra coverage guy and say, you spy Jaden? Because if he runs and it's man coverage, there's no one who's got him. So now if you do that, is he going to make you pay because you're sitting there, you're not helping in coverage, and they got guys like McLaurin and McCaffrey and all these other guys that maybe beat one guy in man coverage, and you're off to the races. So it puts the Lions defense in a bit of a predicament in how they're going to handle Jaden and his ability to run, because we all know he can throw it.
Yeah, it'll be a fun game. I just opened up my DraftKings. The over-under for this game is 55.5, which is massive. Comparison, the Texans.
See, I don't know these things. So
Texans-Chiefs game is 41.5. So, I mean, 55 is one of the biggest over-unders you'll see in an NFL game. Okay, and then two more games. We got Sunday afternoon at 3 o'clock. We got Eagles-Rams. And again, I think these teams are interesting. The Eagles can run the ball, play defense. I think Rams can do the same thing. But both have good quarterbacks, good offenses, good game. So who you got, Eagles, Rams?
very interesting matchup. We kind of hit on it, but you're also having to understand like what the Rams are dealing with personally and with what's going on, and our hearts and our prayers are out to the people out in LA and California. I mean, you see these scenes, it's just it's crazy. And I have a lot of close friends, coaches, players, all those things on the Rams, and been checking in with them. And it's just unreal, right? And the one thing I would say, and hats off to the Rams organization for taking care of their players and their players' families. Like, they flew down to Arizona, they offered to take people's families. I heard there was even some pets on the plane. And being able to do that when it's the most meaningful time of the year, and obviously we're all privileged to be players and have those perks, but like to do that for your players, it showed the way they came out and played against the Vikings. Like, they understood and Stafford talked about it after the game. He's like, we're playing for more than just ourselves out there. And so when you have a team that has that behind them, I think it's an interesting storyline. Now, they got to go from West Coast to East. There was talks about whether they could even practice in LA because of the air quality with the smoke and all of those things. I don't know where they're at with that at this point, but God, this is a tough one.
Philly's
to
a
go
tough
with.
environment too. I mean, the weather.
It is a tough environment.
Fans.
Who knows? I should check the weather. That's what I'm going to do right now before I make a pick, because if there's weather involved, you got a team coming from LA. That could be. So let's see what that says.
The Eagles are 6-point favorites on the spread. So
weather.
It's pretty big.
This is Sunday, right?
This is Sunday, 3:00.
3:00. We got snow.
Snow in Philly.
Snow in Philly. It's calling for snow in Philly. We just gave you a weather report for the first time on the Quick Snap podcast. I think that favors the Eagles and their running game. Usually that's what that's going to do. So I'm going to go with the Eagles. But honestly, I'm pulling for the Rams. Everything they've gone through and the people that I know out there, and I know they have a tremendous coaching staff because I know a lot of those guys. And I think if the Rams come out and play defense the way they did the other night, it's just going to come down to how much can they limit Saquon.
Yep. Well, I hope the Rams win. I absolutely hate the Eagles, so would love to see the Rams win. Last game, Sunday, 6:30 in Buffalo. Bills-Ravens, best game of the weekend by far. The Baltimore Ravens are actually 1-point favorites here, so technically the Bills are underdogs at home. And again, this is a battle of the MVP race. I think everyone says it should be Josh, and there's all the Lamar guys. So this would be, I think the winner should win MVP, but I know that doesn't actually matter because I think the votes are in maybe.
Yeah,
but,
it's in already, right?
Yeah.
But in the public perception, that it will matter, right?
Oh, 100%.
People will say it should be this person or that person. And this is what I said yesterday on Sirius is I'm sure both of those guys would gladly forego that award to win this game. I mean, that's just the reality. And like you said, save the best for last, right? Sunday at 6:30. These two teams going to be going at it. And it's look, they've already played each other this year, and it didn't go well for the Bills. And it seemed like it was more recent than it wasn't. When I looked yesterday, it was like week 4 of the season. And
early.
I think if you're the Bills, you want to jump ahead early. You don't want to have a slow start the way you did against the Broncos. And you want to this is the one thing with that Bills defense. They've always kind of been a bend but don't break, like play a too high shell, maybe rotate down late. Like with Lamar and Derrick Henry back there, that's a interesting way of how they're going to have to maybe change their philosophy a little bit, because you can't just let these guys running all over the place and let them dictate how they want to play the game. If you're the Bills, you got to go in, start with your best 2 drives, try to get up early and make the Ravens feel uncomfortable, where they're going to have to get more away from handing the ball to Derrick Henry and maybe dropping back and passing, which Lamar has shown that he's capable of, but it's not their comfort zone. And you got to get them out of your comfort zone. It's going to be cold. I think the wind chill is in 11 degrees there. So
the weatherman Hoyer, I literally just Googled it on my phone to get ahead of you. But yeah. I think you're spot on with the wind
I looked
chill.
that up yesterday. Look, as a quarterback in the NFL, the first thing you do is you check the weather for Sunday, and you check it every single day as it moves, because it can affect the game.
Yeah.
So I'm going Bills.
I'm going Bills too.
They were my pick earlier in the year. The Vikings let me down on that one, so I got to stick with them. I'm
going Bills too. I want Josh to get this done. And these are 2 quarterbacks that everyone says they haven't won the big one. 2 quarterbacks that are elite, probably top 3, definitely top 5 in the league. So again, very fun game. I think these games will be more fun than what we saw on Wild Card Weekend. So. All right, well, that's a wrap on the playoffs. I want one more pick from you before we get out of here. We got the college national championship, Ohio State, Notre Dame, Monday night. Ohio State's 9.5-point favorites. But who you got in that one?
Same thing here. My heart tells me Notre Dame. Marcus Freeman, a guy I played in some All-Star games with, played against when he was a player at Ohio State. So I'm sure this is an interesting time for him as an alumni of Ohio State. But I think my head tells me it's Ohio State. They're just so talented. That Jeremiah Smith is unreal. Not to mention Ebuka, or I don't know how to say.
I think you nailed it. Yeah.
Yeah.
I'm not gonna try.
Those are two. Now the one guy's a true freshman, so you got to wait 2 years to draft him. But the other one's a first round pick.
Yeah.
And to have that talent, the running back that they have, the defense that they have. I saw someone say, is it Jack Sawyer? Is that the number 33?
Yeah, the defensive end.
It's a very Vrabel, Patriot-esque type player. Could he be
second round
here in Foxborough at some point? I mean, he returned a touchdown. He looked pretty good to me, and he seems to have the mentality that would fit with those guys. So not a not too early potential mock draft right there, but Rabe's Ohio State guy, Ohio guy, Jack Sawyer, leader of the team. Yeah. What a great story that would be. Win a national championship and then get drafted by a fellow Buckeye head coach here in New England, and a position that I could see him coming in and being that type of Vrabel-like player.
That's a good take. I haven't heard that one. Yeah, Jack Sawyer, look out for him. He's an Ohio guy, from Ohio.
Similar in size, too. Like, I looked it up. Like, he's 6'5".
He's a beast.
Intense guy. He was the one who fought the people on... Now, I'll say this. If you don't want someone to plant the flag in your field, just beat him.
Yeah, right. Yeah. So, national champ will be good. I'm going Ohio State, but it'll be good. Well,
that's Monday night, right?
Yeah, Monday night.
Is this not the greatest time of the year for football?
It is definitely the best.
Last week it was Thursday, Friday, Saturday, Sunday, Monday, all playoff football. That's why I love how they've gone to this playoff format in college.
I agree. Well, that's a wrap on episode 22. Patriots Nation, welcome to the Mike Vrabel era. I'm excited. DA sounds excited. Hoy, you sound excited, so it'll be good.
I think next week we get David out there snapping. I'll throw, you catch.
I would love it. I'll run a route tree for you. Oh, all right. That's my dream. I'm
ready. We'll see if David's at that point of his rehab where he can snap.
We'll put it on the calendar.
Get it back, and it's like riding a bicycle. Put my hands under there, get a snap, get a drop.
That sounds great.
What's the over/under if we run? I'm trying to think of a route tree. It's about 10 routes. Yeah. If we run 10 to the right and 10 on the left, how many are you catching?
I think you're underestimating my athletic ability.
I don't think it's your athletic ability I'm underestimating. I think you're underestimating catching balls from an NFL quarterback.
I got some hands, Hoy. I got some hands.
So what is it? If it's 20 opportunities.
If you put it on me, I will catch it.
There's not going to be a ball that is uncatchable.
If there's not an uncatchable ball, I will catch the ball. I believe in you can touch
20 for 20?
I think I go 20 for 20 if you put it on me.
If I throw it full speed.
Yeah. Oh, yeah. Unleash that thing. Yeah.
All right. Get a camera crew ready.
I would love to. We'll get Jules from.
What helmet do you want? I got 9 different ones. I got all the teams. I could bring you whatever you want.
Oh, I'm wearing a Pat. I'm going Pats.
And you want throwback or you want?
Yeah, I want
the Pat the Patriot.
The throwback. Yeah, like the
visor. No visor.
No visor. No.
Okay. No swag for you?
No, I won't go.
Do you have gloves? That's the biggest question.
No, but I can run to Dick's Sporting Goods.
All right.
Unless you got any.
Okay, last question. How many fingers do you break if you catch the balls?
I promise you. This is going to be good.
I cannot wait.
And then after I go 20 for 20, you're going to call Mike Vrabel yourself and say, hey, I got a guy for you in the slot this year. He's a real stud. So,
all right. I love it.
Can't wait.
Sounds good.
All right, guys. See you next week.
See ya.